What's up, everybody? So today we're going to talk about training complexes. We're going to talk about what they are, why to use them, when to use them, and then give you an example of a simple complex that you can use as a sprinter or as someone who wants to get faster and more explosive. So what are training complexes? Basically, it's when you set up multiple exercises. You do them in sequence, so you do exercise A for one set, you do exercise B for one set, exercise C for one set, and then you repeat that triple set multiple times. How many exercises you include is up to you. How many times you do it is up to you. Obviously, you want to be reasonable with the amount of exercises you choose. If you do, 50 different exercises, that's probably going to be too much. But, 2, 4, 3, I don't know, something in that range is probably reasonable. As far as how many sets, that's obviously going to depend on how intense the exercises are. But for what we're going to talk about today, probably 3 to 5 sets of, say, 3 exercises. So why would you want to use them? Well, for one, if you're coming off of a training break, or maybe you just had a GPP phase where you didn't do a lot of intense sprinting, your body's not really ready yet to do full sprint training sessions. It'll be quite a shock to your body if you hop in, you get up off the couch after taking 2 months off, and then you go do, 8 times 40 meters at 100%. A, you're going to get really sore. B, you're going to be at a high risk of an acute injury. And if you do that, you just jump straight into it, well, 3 weeks, 6 weeks later, you might be at risk of a chronic overuse injury because those tissues have not been, prepared gradually for more volume. If you just slap yourself in the face with a bunch of volume on day one and then you keep doing that, the likelihood of an acute or a chronic injury is going to be high. The likelihood of excessive fatigue is going to be high, and we don't want that. We want to get through the season as healthy as we can, get to the point in the season where we need to, be doing the most volume. We need to gradually build up to that point. So training complexes allow you to incorporate sprinting and other exercises which will help you with your sprinting, but do so in a way to where it's a more gradual progression and a more gradual exposure to these exercises that we're going to use in order to, get faster. Now, the other thing is, I believe, and many good, high-level coaches believe, that complexes are good for skill development. If you think of each different exercise as a different movement puzzle, as long as those exercises are, somewhat related or relevant to sprinting, then solving different movement puzzles is going to force your brain to have to, get out of stereotype movement patterns. You're going to be forced to learn these different exercises. So if you want to enhance your ability to learn skills as far as movement skills, like bounding, sprinting, jumping, things like that, then combining different exercises in sequence in a complex is a great way to work on building movement skills. And the early part of the training year is the best time to do that. You don't have to be in peak shape, and you shouldn't be in peak shape in the first, weeks or even first couple months of training. So we can use training complexes to give ourselves slightly different movements that are going to affect the body differently, get as good as we can at doing those different movements. Because we're doing different movements in sequence, we're going to have to, be adaptable and be able to handle moving in a different way. So I don't mean to belabor the point, but complexes are a good way to work on skill development. So that's another reason why you might want to use them, in addition to preventing injury and preventing overtraining. Now, when would you want to use them? I think, for one, it's good to use them early in the season for the reasons I spoke about already, as far as injury prevention and, just lowering the risk of injury overall. But you can also use them early in the week. Rolf Omen, for example, he likes to use what he calls an activation session on the first day of training for the week, which is basically the complex that we're going to talk about here. But that allows the athlete to get exposed to, moving explosively, some high-intensity training, but none of the exercises are done at a volume that would inhibit their ability to come back and sprint either the next day, 2 days later, 3 days later, or whenever that next sprint training session is done. Whereas if you come out on day one of the training week and you just blast a bunch of sprints, you're probably going to be fried for a long time, and it's just you're not going to be in the best situation to perform as well as you can within that session. I find that if I come off of, a couple days off, for example, I don't sprint as well as if or as compared to maybe a day where I did a little bit of sprinting the day before, or I did something explosive the day before. I just feel a little bit more tuned into movements, and my technique is better if I've done something. So if you want to get yourself in the best state of readiness to perform a really high quality sprint training session, then using a training complex early in the week that is related to sprinting can be one way to then improve the quality of a sprint training session that you do later in that week. So both early in the season or early in a week, both are great times to utilize complexes. Now, the example complex that we're going to look at today is quite simple. Basically, you do a speed bound or an alternate leg bound, then you do a straight leg run or a straight leg bound, and then you do an acceleration. Now, obviously, you could use other exercises like, a resisted sprint with a non-resisted sprint. That would be a contrast, but it's still considered a complex because you're doing exercises in sequence and alternating between them as you go through the sets. But it's up to you how you do it. But I think early in the year, a great way to start off with complexes is to include bounding, straight leg running, and accelerating. You can do 3 to 5 sets. If you do 3 sets, that's 9 total reps. If you do 5 sets, that's 15 total reps. You probably don't want to go to that right away, but you can build up to that over time. But basically, you come out, you do your warm-up, then you do an alternate leg bound or a speed bound, you do a straight leg run or a straight leg bound, and then you do an acceleration. You do that 3 to 5 times, session's done, boom, you go home, recover, and then get ready for the rest of the week. So hopefully this gives you guys some idea of how you can utilize complexes in your training, why you might want to do that, and why it might be, preferential to do that instead of just coming out and doing a bunch of sprints. We have to think about, where are we going to progress to throughout the season? Eventually we're going to get to the point where, we're doing 8 times 40 meters or 6 times 40 meters or, 6 times 60 or whatever it is, 150s, whatever you're going to progress to. So if you start off the year very close to the point at which you aim to progress toward, then eventually you're going to hit a point where your body either stops adapting because you've continued to just hammer sprints the whole time and your body gets tired of it. You may start to see stereotype movement patterns because you haven't had enough variation in your training earlier in the year. There's a number of issues that can arise if you jump too far into sprint training too early in the year. So obviously we want to sprint basically from day one. But how much are we sprinting? How much are we focusing only on sprinting versus incorporating other exercises into our training? How, does session 1 relate to how we're going to progress to session, 200 or whatever we get to eventually later in the season? And using complexes is a great way to set ourselves up for success by minimizing the risk of injury, improving movement skill acquisition by having variation in our training earlier in the year. Eventually, when you get to the point where you're prioritizing just sprinting, your movement variation is going to go down. You're going to be doing less individual exercises and focusing more on sprinting. So we want to progress to that point, and we want to progress from more variation early in the year to less variation toward when we want to perform at our best. So that's why early in the year, complexes are a great thing to use. And then as time goes on, you can continue to use complexes, maybe early in the week. You can use them in the gym. You can use them with resisted and unresisted sprinting. All those things are great and things that you can incorporate into your program. But that's all I have to say for now on this topic. Hopefully this gives you, something to think about, something that you can incorporate in your training. I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching.